The National Peace Committee has condemned vote buying and fake news ahead of the 2023 general election. The committee, chaired by a former Nigerian head of state, General Abdul Salami Abubakar, at a meeting on Thursday in Minna, the Niger state capital, also agreed that candidates and their spokespersons would have to sign 2 peace accords. A statement by the committee said Nigerians should know that the 2023 general election is more than an election. It is an opportunity to serve Nigeria, to defend Nigeria, and to uphold national unity and progress. The committee, whose membership comprises of eminent Nigerians, said. Now, we're joined by Arise analyst Kayode Otitoju today to discuss the role of the Peace Committee in the Nigerian political system and the dangers of vote buying during elections. It's great to have you. Good day, sir.
Good day.
Now, created in 2014 and touted to have been a very effective body, what are the actual responsibilities and roles of the National Peace Committee?
I think the role is to moderate how post-election reaction is handled. Okay, that no violence. Make sure that once the result is declared and its outcome of free and fair election, then it's acceptable to all. And in order to do that, the people that, comprise the peace committee are people that are respected in all spheres of life, be it economic, political, religion, traditional headship, and whatever. So they are drawn from various, sphere of life, and there are people who have seen it all. People like Bishop Kuka, the chairman himself, former President Abdul Salam Abubakar. Okay, then you have the emirs, the Oba, even media houses owner, like what's the name?
John Momo.
John Momo.
Femi Otodola.
No. I mean media.
Okay, media people.
Amoka Pemo. So it cuts across. People who are, in a way, by their standing, they are apolitical, and once they mediate on issue, people should listen. Now they are saying yes, we have to do this. And that was formed as early as 2014 in preparation for the election of 2015. Because the 2015, you started seeing the cloud right from 2014 that there might be problem, having the current president, then saying that, okay, it must be him or nobody. And here was the sitting governor, president, too, wants to go for his own normal term. You get my point. So people foresaw this, and they came together and formed this body. And so far, so good. The body has been able to mediate very well. And they are getting ready for what is coming up next year as well. You mentioned vote buying. I don't know.
Yes, I sure did.
So we can discuss that.
Let's get straight into it. Unemployment is rife. Yeah. Inflation is rising. University students have been out of school for more than half the year. Realistically, on the ground, how likely is it that vote buying can be deterred in 2023?
Thank you. Vote buying started in earnest as far back as 2006, when we were preparing for primaries for the 2007 election. by then, there were former governors like Odili, Ibori, Okorosha. They were the ones that were really, juggling, getting ready to become president. Okay? Because Baba Obasanjo's time was already more or less over. And so these were former governors, in big states with money, and they were ready for the primaries. So, meanwhile, President Obasanjo knew who would not succeed him. Okay? So, Ibori, Odili, Okorosha, in the day of convention is like primaries. And we went to Abuja. I was in PDP then, and I was a delegate. Something funny happened, really. People thought Odili had more money and would have been the candidate. But Okorosha was smart. He was going around the camps of the delegates, collecting the delegates' ticket and offering 130,000, per card. I'm giving you the genesis of how both vines started. So by the time he finished, even Odili, I think people like Baba Obasanjo had started telling him, that's not the way. He had his own agenda. So about 2 hours to the primary, various states camp didn't really know where we were going because we were waiting for the pronouncement by Obasanjo or his body language. So later they said it's Yaradua. Yaradua has no money. How is he going to do it? So, but within 1 hour to the convention, to the primary, the various camps started getting the money. Okay, someone else funded it. And every delegate, they said his own money should be every delegate, 200,000. For Okorosha, 130 for people who succumb, giving their card. So, money still determined it. Yaradua that didn't have money got maybe people that funded it, and all delegates went home with 200,000 naira. Then, okay, that's that. Then Okorosha, with his money, he came second. He will have been the vice president, and that's where this problem of what's the name? Wike coming second or whatever. But from nowhere, Obasanjo brought Jonathan, Goodluck Jonathan, who was already a governor-elect in Bayelsa. He had already won election, to succeed, anyway, in Bayelsa. And they said, that's the vice. Okorosha, everybody has to, fall in line, because if Obasanjo say this is the way, if you don't do it, the FCC will go after you. Okay? So that was how it started. By the time it was now 2011, when the election, the real election of Jonathan.
Sorry to interrupt. I really appreciate what you're taking us to the background, but I also want to make sure that we do justice to these current issues. We saw what happened in Ekiti State, for instance. INEC pointed out specifically that they have two issues that they're concerned about during this election, which is one, insecurity, and the second one is vote buying. That, for INEC to say that they're concerned about that, that's a huge red flag. When we spoke with one of our correspondents who monitored that, Oba Adeoye, he told us about new tactics they were using. We spoke with Babachir Lawal, who said, if they give you money, collect it and go and buy Gary and cast your vote based on your conscience. But then we have cases whereby, Oba told us about various accounts whereby people were not paid until they were able to, gesture towards the person who would pay them later, like, oh, we see I voted, and they cast their votes and then collect later. So now that Vimba pointed out so that we have unemployment standing at 33%, people are thinking of tomorrow and probably not the next 4 years. It's a big issue. How do we make sure that the electorate is well informed to know the true cost of selling their votes?
You see, the problem with you young ones is you don't allow elderly people to land. Maybe because there's nothing like history again in our curricula. Okay? So when you mention something and someone wants to give you the genesis, you allow the person to land. You can't just solve the problem without knowing where it started. When you are talking of vote buying, you are only talking of the voters that get maybe 10,000 naira, which is now the highest they are offering in the case of Ekiti. But of the INEC that takes millions in order to look the other way for vote. That's vote buying. In fact, the real vote buying in Ekiti, out of 180-something thousand votes cast between SDP and APC, vote buying through INEC alone took care of 100,000 votes. Are you with me? While the remaining 80-something, maybe 83 or so, were now genuine voters and people who were allowed to sell their vote. The people who are allowed to sell their vote out of the APC people, they are not up to 5,000. But the real vote buying was with INEC. And that's why Professor Mahmoud said that we are going to look into this. We know where the problem lies. That of Ekiti, let's just forget about it. By the time it was Oshunzo, this thing, a month later, Professor Mahmoud had already looked into it. It wasn't easy to buy a vote. You get my point? So vote buying is through the voters, through INEC, which is bought and the figure is already put in place as a margin before the election itself. And the delegates, which I had already mentioned during primaries and whatever. So it's going to be a big problem because, first of all, that of delegates has passed now for the 2003. Atiku have been able to buy more delegates than Wike, and Jagaban have been able to buy more votes than Rotimi Amechi. So that stage has gone. The stage we are going to now is the real election. How do we make sure that the electoral commissioners at state level that superintend over election affairs at the state level are not compromised and are not bought over?
Does the National Peace Committee have the capacity to do that, since we've already stated that it's contained of high-ranking, respected members of society? So we hope that there will be a head-to-head and engagement at a very senior level. Is that what it'll take to, because you've highlighted that it's so multidimensional?
It's possible because whether you like it or not, we Africans still have a culture of respect for elders and constituted authorities. So when elders come together and say this is how things should go, some people will listen. There will be some deviants that will go out of the norms. But I'm saying that actually it is a body put in place and is put in place for good purpose to achieve non-violence, engagement in hate speech and what have you. And I know they will have their way because Professor Mahmoud Yakub is bent on doing the bid of President our president,
President Buhari.
Buhari, zero tolerance to, anything that can make the election not credible. Okay? And the two of them are working together. And with the peace committee in place to give them the buttress, to add flesh to the bones, it will be okay.
May I? Okay. So I was going to ask you, well, it's one thing to sign a peace accord. In terms of implementation, to make sure that it's seen through, because they asked some of the candidates basically not to resort to hate speech and, to basically be civil and also to accept the outcomes of the elections. What is in place to ensure that that this implementation of the peace accord is actually carried out?
I think the elders, I will refer them to them as elders, they have already specified some of the constitution that must be met. Political parties must, when they are choosing their mouthpiece, they must choose people who will deliver their manifesto in a convincing, non-antagonistic manner. So once the people who are speaking for you are okay, even in the face of provocation, they know how to handle things. So they are already setting such agenda for political parties, and they will embrace. For instance, at times I see this guy, Buala, I think it's a mouthpiece for you. When he speaks, you know that this is an intelligent person that knows how to harness his, facts and deliver it in a convincing and persuasive way. You could as well choose another person who is his own mode is fight. And Nigeria has passed that stage. You want to listen to, issue-based campaign and what have you.
I'm glad you referred to the issue of spokespeople and how parties are going to be delivering their messages, so to speak. We've already seen a lot of banter, if I may call it that, back and forth between candidates. The campaign hasn't even started. But taking it away from the institutional level, let's look at this issue of fake news, which is usually almost impossible to regulate. It is not institutionalized. It's between, Kayode, sorry to use your name, and Femi sitting in their house. Is that your son's name? Oh, I'm so sorry. It's between them sitting in their home, and not everybody knows how to fact check. It's not always, there's disinformation and there's misinformation. It's not always intentional when people share fake news. How does one attack this issue? Because we already saw in the last election that fake news, and then we saw what happened in 2020 with the protests and so forth. The conversations are already very difficult to understand and regulate and comprehend which are credible, which are not credible. What do you think the National Peace Committee's options are to ensure that fake news doesn't end up being inflammatory and, instigating incidents of violence and so forth?
Yeah, when you take a cursory look at the composition of the body, I told you John Momo is a member, Amoka Pemo, the person who started was the name of this newspaper, one of the oldest newspapers, apart from Tribune, it's a member. Then the Catholic leader, like Onayekon, Kuka, they are there. Then not a man now, of the Sultan of Sokoto is a member. So most of their messages will be propagated and be delivered through the mass media, where they have representative, through the church as agent of socialization, the headship of Christian, Muslim, they are all there. The populace and even Mamu, the chairman of INEC is there. You get my point. So when you have that, there is a way of, slowing down, if not total eradication of violence through persuasion. Okay. And this will be handled by the committee. Is it committee or council?
The committee. On that note, Mr. Otitoju, we love these conversations. Thank you so much for always blessing us with your time. That's a Rise News analyst, Kayode Otitoju, sharing his insights on the role of the National Peace Committee on the road to the 2023 elections. We'll be taking a very quick break. Newsday returns in a moment with some of our top stories, including voting underway as 4 regions in Ukraine decide on whether to join Russia. Kyiv and the West are calling the so-called referendums an illegal land grab. Stay with us.